What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Sunday, July 27th. Hope you guys have had a great weekend. Before we get started, one thing that I want to kind of clear up is I've seen a lot of comments where people say you got this name wrong or you mixed these people up. Actually, these are coming from the reports. There were some mistakes in there, but I'm reading these verbatim. So if there's any mix-up of names, it's not coming from me. It's coming straight from these files. We're going to start with the sequence of events with law enforcement the day of the homicide. This is from Tyson Barrett's perspective. On November 13th, around 12 p.m., I received a call from Sergeant Gunderson informing me that his team responded to 1122 King Road, where they found 4 deceased college-aged individuals inside the residence. It was apparent they had all been murdered. They did not know the location or identity of the suspect. Sergeant Gunderson's team had cleared the residence and secured the scene. They identified a group of college-aged individuals outside the residence and had started interviewing them. I called Chief Fry, Captain Lanier, and Captain Dollinger to let them know about the homicide. I called Detective Sergeant Lawrence, told him about the homicide, and asked him to call in detectives. Sergeant Lawrence said he would call in Sergeant Blaker and Corporal Payne to assist as well because they were slated to rotate detectives soon. Sergeant Lawrence said he was also calling in Idaho State Police to ask the Region 2 detectives to process the crime scene. I called the University of Idaho Dean of Students and the Office of Public Safety to inform them of the homicides because the residence was near the campus and the victims appeared to be college students. When I arrived on scene, I met with Sergeants Gunderson and Lawrence on the street in front of the residence. We briefly discussed the scene and I was given the names of the 4 individuals who were killed: Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee. I was also told 2 of the witnesses outside were roommates and were apparently inside the residence when the incident occurred. Sergeant Gunderson told me a dog was taken out of Kaylee's room and transported to the Humane Society for safekeeping. It didn't appear the dog had gone into the rooms where the murders were committed because it didn't have any visible blood on its body. I contacted the Dean of Students and gave him the victims' names and asked if he could verify if they were students. He contacted me later and confirmed all 4 were students, but they didn't have any emergency contact information for them other than their permanent addresses. At 1:04 p.m., the University of Idaho sent out a vandal alert via text message regarding the homicides. So I looked this up just to make sure I got the words right, and the vandal alert said Moscow PD is investigating a homicide on King Road near campus. Suspect is not known at this time. Stay away from the area and shelter in place. More information will be made available when possible. About 1:30 p.m., we moved the witnesses, who I believed were students, to the Moscow Police Department training room. I met with Sergeants Lawrence and Blaker, Corporal Payne, and Detective Mowry and asked them to start interviewing each person. I also met with the Associate Dean of Students at the police department. I talked to her earlier about having the students come to the police department to be interviewed. Redacted had an assistant with her and they were there to comfort students and be a resource if necessary. While I was in the training room, I was told 2 of the witnesses were Ethan's siblings. They told me their parents had been informed of Ethan's death and they were on their way to Moscow. I asked Sergeant Lawrence to arrange death notifications for Kaylee and Maddie's families. He later informed me a deputy went to Kaylee's family home to notify them, but they had already been made aware. Captain Dollinger told me he met Xana's father on scene and asked him to meet at the police department where he informed him of Xana's death. An officer went to notify family of Maddie's death. When he arrived, they were already on their way to Moscow. When they arrived at the police department, I did the death notification and asked Sergeant Lawrence to interview them. Around 12:15 p.m., I met with the university president and his staff in his office on campus. I told them about the homicides and that the suspect location and identity remain unknown. I returned to the police department and Kaylee's ex-boyfriend approached me asking if I could release Murphy to him. He said both he and Kaylee owned the dog, and at that point I was busy working with detectives and administration and didn't release the dog. I talked to Corporal Payne, who interviewed him, where he told about them dating, breaking up, but remained friends. Later that afternoon, he approached me again, asking when I could release the dog to him. I called Captain Lanier, who was with Sergeant Gunderson outside 1122 King Road. Lanier confirmed with Gunderson they understood he co-owned the dog, and the dog was taken to the animal shelter for safekeeping. I was told the dog was uninjured and didn't have any blood on it. I agreed to release Murphy to him because it was my understanding we had only taken the dog into custody for safekeeping, and he was an owner. I asked to have a patrol officer meet him at the shelter to release the dog. I continued to work with detectives and command staff for the rest of the day. So here's the report written about Murphy by Sergeant Gunderson. He arrived on scene around 12:05 p.m. and noticed a medium-sized, curly-haired, tan dog on the bed inside Kaylee's room. The dog appeared timid and scared and did not react to our presence. Due to the chaos surrounding the scene, my initial concern was preserving the scene. As part of that process, I asked one of the officers to shut the door so the dog didn't attempt to jump on the bed with any of the victims. After the area was blocked off and secure, Corporal Snyder began taking photos of the scene. At some point prior to this process, the dog moved from the bed to under the desk in Kaylee's room. After photos were completed, I asked Deputy Olson to respond and assist by taking the dog to the Humane Society for safekeeping. The dog was timid and took some coaxing to move from under the desk, but did not appear to have injuries or stains on its body or paws. Due to the amount of blood in the bedrooms where the victims were located and the lack of blood on or around the dog, I don't believe the dog was on or around the victims. I walked the dog to the door and gave him to Officer Warner until Deputy Olson arrived, who took him to the Humane Society. I asked Deputy Olson to put on the intake sheet to not release the dog to anyone unless the Moscow Police Department gave approval. I did not take any photos of the dog specifically during my initial response to the scene. Some of the photos taken by Corporal Snyder have the dog in the background and can also be seen on my body-worn camera. For the next interview, I am comfortable saying who it is, even though it's redacted, because Ethan's sister appeared on the One Night in Idaho documentary and recounted a lot of what she said in this interview. She was interviewed November 13th at 12:20 p.m. She consented to a forensic search of her phone. I asked her to tell me what her day looked like on November 12th. She said she had her formal the night of the 12th. She didn't do much prior to the formal and went to Hunga Dunga for the event at approximately 7 p.m. She left with friends, including her brother Ethan, at approximately 8 p.m. She was dropped off at her house as the group was planning to go to the lodge party. However, she stated she didn't go and remained at her sorority until her brother Hunter called her the morning of November 13th. She stated Hunter told her to come to Xana's when he called. He didn't elaborate on why she needed to come to the house. She names who all was there at the house when she arrived. Someone told her when she got there that someone was in the house and Ethan and Xana didn't make it. She said Ethan, Xana, and Hunter had been texting her the night before, asking her to come to the party. She saw the text once she woke up the morning of the 13th. She did not go into the King Road house that morning. She couldn't think of anyone or any reason why someone would commit these homicides. Now, for this next report, it looks like the date in the report may be wrong because it has it listed as November 11th, 2022, which is obviously before the homicides, but the filing date says January 11th of 2023. A female was interviewed who lives at the Whites on Taylor Avenue. She went to 1122 King Road the afternoon of November 12th around 12:30 p.m. to hang out with Xana. They all went to the Whites around 1 p.m. for different parties in the apartment complex. She saw Xana, Ethan, the two roommates, Kaylee, Maddie, and several other people. Ethan left to go to his sister's formal, and she thinks that was around 3 p.m. She got a text from Ethan around the same time asking for someone's Snapchat, but she never sent it to him. She didn't know why Ethan wanted this information and said, as far as she knew, they did not have issues with each other. She told me she had heard from others that Kaylee had seen some random guy behind the house when she took Murphy out to pee. She also heard of the incident where a male followed her around the Winco store, out of the store, and she thought he tried to get into her car. She wasn't sure where she heard this from, but the roommates could possibly tell more. The next interview is of the DoorDash driver. This was done on November 23rd, 2022, so 10 days after the murders. From November 12th through the early morning hours of the 13th, she delivered 3 orders to the King Road, Queen Road area. The delivery at 1122 King Road was her last one for the night. She couldn't find the King Road house because the address was hidden by the porch light, which caused her to remain in the area for approximately 15 minutes. Her Google Maps told her to go to the parking lot immediately behind 1122 King Road. She initially parked in front of the house and could see a female in the top left window, which was the 3rd-story bathroom. She saw the female a couple of more times in the same window, and the female would duck down when the driver looked at her. She drove to that back parking lot behind the residence and parked. She could see the back courtyard area of the house and noticed all of the lights were on. Her map told her to walk into the back of the house, but she did not feel comfortable doing so because there was no path. She started walking down the road immediately east of the residence. She saw a tan sedan drive next to her while she was walking. There was one male driver who did not look at her. She said he looked completely zoned and just drove by her. She later stated the driver was white with blonde or red spiky hair. She also noticed the dome light in the car was on when it passed by. She later told me the male was wearing a light-colored collared shirt. She walked back up to her car and drove back to the front of the King Road residence, at which point she saw the address number. She left the order at the front door, took a picture, and left at approximately 4 a.m. During the time she was in the area of the King Road residence, the white Elantra can be seen via the King Road camera driving back and forth on Willenta Drive and then entering the King Road Queen Road loop at approximately 3:56 p.m. At that point, she pulled into the front parking lot before she dropped the order off, and the white Elantra is pulling in behind her vehicle and then exited King Road at approximately 3:58 a.m. She did not mention seeing the white Elantra behind her at any time. I continued to question her about her time near the residence. At one point, she walked down Queen Road with her flashlight out. She can be seen doing so on footage from a King Road camera. She described the female on the 3rd floor in the bathroom as having long brown hair, but could not identify the girl as one of the victims. About 30 minutes into the interview, she was asked to take part of a cognitive interview. During the interview, she confirmed much of the information she had already told us. Subsequent investigation of video footage and cellular data showed the tan sedan was likely a light-colored SUV which left the area. It doesn't appear she saw the white Elantra at any point during her time near the residence. Now, there is another document I just couldn't put my hands on before this episode where basically they did some test drives going the route the Elantra was seen on, and looking at the street light color, they realized it made their test car look darker than it was due to the color of the street light. The next interview was done by Brett Payne the day of the homicides, November 13th at 1:49 p.m. This is the girlfriend of the young man who found the bodies. She said Xana was her best friend and the others were all her close friends as well. On November 12th, she tells about her day and they went to sleep early. They planned to go to the lodge party, but ended up not going. One of the roommates called her November 13th at 11:51 a.m. and said, last night at 4 in the morning, she heard and saw a man and she and the other roommate were locked in their room sleeping. The roommate wanted her to come check the house because she was too scared. She said the roommate said she heard Kaylee scream and run up the stairs. A while later, the roommate came out of the room and saw the man staring at her, but the man didn't do anything to her. She stayed locked in her room and heard the slide door close, so she ran into the other roommate's room. I asked if she asked the roommate why she didn't call anyone that night. She stated the roommate told her it was because she was intoxicated and didn't want to believe what was going on. She went over to the house after the call, and when she arrived, she went upstairs but was stopped by her boyfriend who told her she did not want to see it. She went back outside and officers responded. I asked if anything seemed out of the ordinary from what she saw. She said there was a large party at the house Friday, November 11th, and the house was just a mess due to the party. She also saw the steak knife her boyfriend grabbed when he went back upstairs to make sure nobody else was in the house. She didn't know who would commit these murders. There were no conflicts, and she hadn't heard of any stalking behavior or recent suspicious circumstances. The next interview is with Ethan's brother, Hunter. Again, on the documentary, he talked about this, so I'm comfortable ignoring these redactions for this one. This was on November 13th at 2:19 p.m. He lives at the Sigma Chi fraternity. He and Ethan went to a formal dinner with their sister. After the formal was over, they went back to redacted. Hunter, Ethan, and Xana were hanging out in his apartment at the fraternity. He last saw Ethan around 9 p.m. when Ethan left his apartment to go up to the main lodge where the party was at. He returned around 9:15 and found Ethan and Xana were gone. He went to bed around 10 p.m. Next up is the interview with the Uber driver. This was done November 14th, the day after the homicides. He was the one that gave Maddie and Kaylee a ride home on the 13th from the downtown area. When asked how he knew Kaylee and Maddie, he said he drives for Uber and Lyft, and they had become regular customers. He said Kaylee had been a regular for about a year. Kaylee contacted him November 12th around 10:02 p.m., asking if he could pick her and some friends up from the King Road residence to take them to the corner club. She didn't use the app to order the ride, she texted him. He arrived around 8:15 and picked up Kaylee, Maddie, and one other female. Later on at 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, Kaylee contacted him again, asking if he could pick her and some friends up at the Grubhub truck. He arrived at 1:49 a.m. and texted that he was there. Kaylee responded they would be there in a second. She said they were at order 75 and their order was 78. A short time later, Kaylee and Maddie came to the car. Kaylee was in the front passenger seat and Maddie was in the rear seat. Maddie was eating her food from the Grub truck with her hands. They all had casual conversation and nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. He took Kaylee and Maddie home, which is about a 3 or 4 minute drive from the Grub truck to the residence. The next interview was with Kaylee's ex-boyfriend the day of the homicides at 2:37 p.m. He consented to his phone being forensically searched and gave his cell phone number. When asked about his day on the 12th, he worked from 2 p.m. to around 10:10 p.m. After leaving work, he dropped some food off for a friend at the corner club. He went to his home on King Road and then returned to the corner club around 11 p.m. He saw Kaylee there and they spoke briefly. The conversation was short but normal. He left the club around 1 a.m. and wasn't sure if Kaylee left before or after him. When he got home, he went to bed. He woke up around 11:30 and saw commotion down the street. He looked at his phone and saw several missed calls from Kaylee and Maddie in the early morning hours of November 13th. One of those was a FaceTime between 2:40 and 3 a.m. He knew Maddie for some time, but said she wouldn't call him for any reason. Kaylee had texted him to tell him he could come to her house to get his vape pen. When asked about the commotion, he saw law enforcement and emergency vehicles parked in front of the house, so he walked over to see what was happening. He said Kaylee would call him on occasion when she was walking home alone or when she was feeling sketched out. He said people came and went from the King Road house very frequently, and more people knew the code to the door than they should have. He wasn't sure if they locked the rear sliding glass door on a regular basis. He talked about him and Kaylee owning the dog, and he recalled once when Kaylee was walking Murphy, she saw a shadowy figure behind the house, but nothing else came from that incident. When asked about his relationship with Kaylee, he said they dated for around 5 years and had broken up several months prior due to a loss of spark, coupled with Kaylee leaving for a job in Texas. There wasn't any conflict and the breakup was mutual. He said there was one guy who would often flirt with Kaylee, but he didn't know of any past stalking incidents or know who would have committed the murders. The last interview we're going to go through on this episode came January 18th, 2023. It was an interview with several friends, and 2 of which recalled a suspicious occurrence they remembered. They said Kaylee had planned a party for one of their birthdays. The date of that party is redacted. Several people, including Kaylee, were on the back patio during the party. Kaylee's dog Murphy ran up into the bushes behind the house on several occasions and would not come back. The group eventually went inside and shut the door. This is the only occurrence the interviewee was present for, but another friend remembered more similar occasions. Law enforcement called this friend and talked about the occasion on her birthday. She said it was unlike Murphy to not immediately return home when called, which is the reason she and Kaylee were concerned about someone being behind the house when Murphy would behave in this manner. She told of another occasion that happened October 29th, 2022, at the King Road residence for a Halloween party. Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were all present. During the party, the group gathered behind on the back patio, and Murphy again ran into the wood line behind the house and would not come back. They also heard noises similar to what it would sound like if someone were moving through the woods on foot. This took place midday, and they didn't see anyone behind the house. However, Murphy's behavior and the noises caused them to go inside and close the door. The last occasion she remembers took place approximately 2 weeks prior to the homicides. Murphy again displayed similar behavior of running into the woods and not coming back when called. Around the same time frame, she and Kaylee returned to the King Road residence and found the rear sliding door open, and Murphy was missing. They had to go out to look for Murphy after they found the door open. She said it wasn't uncommon for people who didn't live there to walk in when no one was home, and friends of the roommates would come and go at will. On the next episode, I'm going to gather a lot of interviews that have happened since sentencing now that the gag order has been lifted of people closely associated with the case, prosecutor, investigators, friends, and see what new information they're giving. They're also giving opinions on the case of the unknowns. So I've read some very interesting stuff, and I would like to break that down and make a whole episode out of these little nuggets and things that we haven't heard about. Now that the judicial process is over, the gag order is lifted, and everybody's free to talk to the media about what they know and their experiences. So that is it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.